of grading, and I'm going to show you an example of that where you're really communicating to students where you're coming from on your grading policies. Refer students to the rubrics, preferably before the assignment is due. This is my favorite trick. Use the comment box to refer students back to their papers for feedback. You know how when you click on the student's name and the dialog box comes up where you put in their grade and then there's comment box? Never put comments in there. Never, never, never. Drive them back to the paper. So just put in their comments in margins, and I like to do that because some of them aren't familiar with that, and if their version of Word won't show it, then they need to upgrade. I just put comments in margins and I push them back into the paper. If you put comments in that box, even if you tell them to look at the paper, they won't look at the paper. Okay? And then put some example papers in the doc sharing. So once you've taught a class, if you have a student that does a great job, and presumably some of your students will get A's on their papers, ask them in an email if you can use their paper in the future. Remove their name and any personal references from the paper, but post that to the doc sharing for other students when you teach next time. Especially when they're anxious about it, they are really appreciative if there's something that they can look at that shows them what a good paper looks like. Yeah?
Is there that sample APA paper out there?
Not in all of the shells.
Well, I've been using that.
That's great.
And it's really, I don't know how many pages is it? 6 or
Right.
8 maybe. Just that this is a, it's just the actual paper.
Yeah.
It's a real dummy paper.
Yeah, that's perfect.
I can't remember what the topic of it is.
That's perfect. That's definitely, not all the shells have access to that, but it's, the same concept. Yeah. It's just, like I said, it really helps them with the anxiety and the resistance and their fears about writing if they can see what a good paper looks like and they say, oh, wow, this is how this person covered this topic. That gives me an idea of how I'm going to cover it for my paper. This is my philosophy of grading. It is constantly being tweaked and changed, but this is where I'm at right now, and I post this in the shell. My philosophy on grading. I try to have a forward-thinking approach. In other words, I don't want my comments to feel punitive, backward-thinking, but I'm trying to show you areas you can improve on for your next paper. Please don't feel overwhelmed or discouraged if you see a lot of comments on your paper. A lot of students see 2 or 3 comments on a page and they flip because they've never gotten that kind of feedback before. So you need to acknowledge, that you're putting feedback in there for a reason. Many times you've made the same mistake more than once, and I'm trying to show you the patterns in your writing. If there is something they're consistently doing wrong, even if I've gotten to the 4 errors and I'm moving on, I do try and show them the patterns because our brains aren't wired to find our own errors a lot of times. And so if I can highlight that they're not consistently using APA to cite their source in the text, I'll highlight that a couple of times so they can see the pattern. I believe that students should have the opportunity to rewrite their first paper for me, so feel free to look at my comments and have another go at it. That is not a requirement of the university. That's my personal preference. The last time that I taught EDU 520, and it's the first course in the sequence for the graduate education students. Many of them had not been to school in a long time. They hadn't written an academic paper in a long time. It was their first class of the program, and I felt like I need to give these students an opportunity to rewrite the first paper for me. That's not a requirement of the university, but I would encourage you to consider it because the students really respond well to that, and you'll see dramatic improvement in their writing if they have the opportunity to rewrite. Grading the second paper that they sent to me took 5 minutes or less. I'd open the first paper, look and see what comments I put in there, open the second paper. If they made the changes that I asked, even if they weren't perfect, if they'd attempted to make the changes that I'd asked for, I marked in there, yay or nay. I'd give them the next grade up, so if they got a C, then they got a B. If they got a B, then they got an A-. I never gave more than an A-. And then I'd move on. It took less than 5 minutes per paper to grade the second round because you're just looking for, did they attempt to make the changes? If they attempted and it didn't go well, a lot of times I would say, okay, you need to re-look at this website, how to write an introduction. You're making progress, but you still need to work on it, or something like that. So this really lays out clearly what the students can expect from me and where I'm coming from when I'm grading their papers. They were very responsive to this and really appreciated hearing this from me. So here's where we talk about some additional resources, and like I said, you're gonna have access to this, so you don't have to worry about writing down all this gobbledygook. But Rubistar is a great website for creating rubrics. It's actually awesome. Basically, you just pick what categories you want to grade a student on, and it builds the rubric for you. And it's free. And who doesn't love a free resource that does a lot of the work for you? So I'd really encourage you to play around in Rubistar. They have like hundreds of rubrics already made that you can adapt for your own class, or you can build a whole new one on your own. But definitely encourage you to play around in there and see if there's something you could use. Berkeley has a lot of really great research on how to be more efficient at grading, so I would encourage you to kick around on their website a little bit. The book that I was talking about significant learning experiences by Fink, if you don't want to spend the $30 for the book, there's a really great supporting website with a lot of resources in it. And then these three, introductions, transition statements, and thesis statements, are websites where I drive the students to improve their writing. And like I said, I will be sharing these with you. This is my favorite comment from an evaluation. I always thought a Christian school would be easier than any other school, but I have learned that you get the same classes and are graded at the same as any other school. Okay, my hope and prayer is that students will find that Christian schools hold them to a higher standard. But I'm encouraged that at least they're seeing consistency from the public school to the private school. You know, that we're not a diploma mill and that we're not running students through, you know, give us a check and you'll get your diploma. That they're actually experiencing some stringent requirements. And so I just encourage you to be encouraged by this, that our students are having a good experience, and they are, with some additional assistance, they are going to show improvements in their writing scores. So let's take a 15-minute break and walk around, because like I said, your brains get numb and your bottom gets